Please join me in welcoming Mr. FaltyDL.
Thank you.
So should we call you Drew or Faulty today?
Drew.
All right, Drew.
Or either.
Well, thanks very much for being with us and coming to talk.
It's my pleasure.
For anyone in the room that's not familiar with your work, how would you describe what you do for a living?
I am an electronic music producer. I sort of DJ in my own way, but I mostly produce records. I'm signed to a couple different labels, primarily Ninja Tune in London, and I wake up and I try and make a tune or finish a remix or do something so I don't feel completely lazy and like I'm not working for my bread. But yeah, I basically just answer a lot of emails and make music. Sort of what I do.
And how would you describe the kind of music that you make?
I guess dance music. That's sort of hard to dance to, but sometimes not so hard. I'm looking down at a lot of my catalog down on the ground there. I don't know how to describe it all because I've sort of touched on a lot of different sort of genres and different things over the years, but influenced by a lot of UK dance music and old Chicago and Detroit records as well and stuff.
Well, maybe a good way to kick things off is just to play something from right now.
Yeah.
What you're working on right now,
absolutely.
or something recent.
Yeah, well,
just give us an idea.
For sure. I'll play something from my new record that's out now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, this is a track on my album that just came out a couple months ago. So this is the newish. It's just a loop. It just keeps doing that. So you get the idea.
So that's from your new LP, Hardcourage, which is out on Ninja Tune.
Yeah.
And it's just come out. I mean, when you're putting an album together that's sort of influenced by the club, but you also want to make a record that people can listen to, how do you find that sort of magic sweet spot in between the two?
I think it's sort of in my catalog. It's rare that I make a track that is just sort of either a DJ tool or just a real dance floor track. So I think it's usually for me, it's just finding a bunch of tracks that have some sort of theme together. As far as whether or not they all belong in the home and on the iPod and whatever, and listening to not in a club atmosphere. I think they all can sort of work like that. So it's really between me and the A&R of whatever label I'm working with on that record.
And how do you know when something's finished?
Is anything ever really finished? No. Yeah, it's finished like the day I'm done making it. I mean, I work on a track, and when I get really bored, it's finished. You know, I don't think that I'm not really a perfectionist. I think some of my favorite moments in my own tracks, if I can say that, is when I've just had some sort of happy accident, like literally in the program, that makes something sound a certain way. I'm like, all right, that's cool, that's good enough. Next. You know, for me, it's like this. It's just about making music. It's not so much about like making these perfect tracks. I don't know.
And what about the sort of agony of putting together an album? You know, and picking 10 songs out of 30 or whatever your process might have been. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on this one, there was a lot of back and forth with the label, and in the end, I think we came to a really good sort of compromise. I mean, the idea of compromising in any sort type of art is something you hopefully don't have to ever encounter. But that being said, I mean, there's realistic things of like the amount of time you can put on a record and budget and campaign and all that type of stuff. But this one, yeah, it was cool. I mean, I just really respect the ears I was working with at Ninja. So it was great. And in the past, on my albums with Mike Paradinas at Planet Mu, this was someone who I'd been sending tracks to for years, who just knows my music, like yourself, for a long time and just knows it really well and sort of knows what my best stuff sounds like. And when I feel like I'm talking to someone that I can really trust, I sort of want to hear more what they think than my own. Because, I mean, if I released sometimes the tracks that I really wanted to release, I think it might not have been a broad sort of look at sort of the time I spent making that album. I don't know.
And when you say you look for sort of approval or you care about people's opinions, who is that? Is that your peers? Is that other musicians? Is it journalists?
Did I say that?
You kind of did, yeah.
In what? You mean in the like as a final project, the album?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Do you care what people think?
yeah,
about
of
your
course.
music?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, this is the way I relate to the world, is through my art. And I absolutely care what people think about it. I mean, I'm still going to put it out there no matter what. And I'm getting a thicker skin towards reviews and all that type of stuff. So I absolutely care what people think. And I think my favorite people to send music to are people that I just really respect, people whose catalogs I know really well. And I send them music and I want them to be brutally honest with me what they think.
Who are those people for you?
Let's see. Who are the people I'm currently sending music to? One sort of contemporary of mine is Floating Points. I really like his music a lot. I think you could probably hear that in some of my records. And what's funny is I sent him a text after this album came out, and a couple of reviews were comparing us to. I was like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, they keep saying I'm trying to sound like you. He's like, man, I listened to your records, so I don't know who first listened to whose, but, you know, we both listened to each other's records, so that was pretty cool. I'm going to release a record this year under my own name on 2000 Black, which is Digo's label from 4 Hero. This is a guy I really respect, of course.
You know, before you did your albums, obviously you put out a series of 12 inches that made everyone sit up and take notice. Maybe we should go back to the first 12 that really had an impact for you. I think it was your first 12 ever, wasn't it?
It was my first 12.
Yeah.
And I think you played it on the radio quite early on. To London. Let's see here. How do I open this up?
Thanks for bringing all the vinyl in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't ever get a chance to play them, so why not?
When was that from?
Released, I think, beginning of 2009.
Right.
So I made it like 2007, 2008.
Relatively recently.
Yeah.
Depending on how old you are.
In the great scheme of things.
But the clue's in the name, right? I mean, there's obviously a lot of influence going on in there, and
yeah,
one side of the record is to New York, the other side is to London, right?
No,
one is to Party, one is to London.
Neither.
No. Okay.
No, yeah, this is to London. To New York came out on the record on Planet Mu That's same right. year, and Party was the next 12 I did for Ramp.
But both cities seem to have had a big influence. Obviously, you live here.
Yeah.
But it seems like both New York and London have had a strong influence on your music.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this was me really just trying to make like a dance record, I guess. I don't know, like a house record. But it's funny is that I hadn't really been to many parties. I hadn't been to many parties where I'd heard this music. You know, I guess at the time we called it post-dubstep, didn't we? Or some people did. Where I'd heard that on a system. So that my interpretation of that is this record, which I actually mixed down very quietly. And there's some weird things I do where I just sort of drop a 16th note here and there from a measure. And so it's like an instant clang playing this record out, you know, unless you sort of cue it halfway through. Which just that's why I think I like listening to it now, is because I hear a lot of my old mistakes, but there's something sort of honest in those mistakes I was making, because I was just so excited about making a record at the time. I was just like, I got it. And my friend did the artwork, and like, we're like, yeah, we'll put 45 RPM on it because it's cool, and records say the speed on the outside, like these little things, and like you can't even really read some of the typography, like it's a bit rasterized, but we were just so happy to make a record. It was so cool.
So talking about your musical influences, a lot of which come from, you know, outside of the United States, I guess, you know, you're talking about London in this record. There's definitely a bit of a garage shuffle, but I know you're a big fan of all music from London and the UK, including jungle and stuff like that, right? Yep,
very much.
So when did all of that wave of music really start influencing you?
Well, I got into electronic music, like old Warp Record stuff, when I was pretty young, when I was about 15 or 16, young enough, a little over half my life ago.
And what kind of parties were you going to, and where were you living?
Well, that's the thing. I was living in New Haven. I hadn't moved to New York yet, and I was going to hardcore shows, meaning like punk rock shows and hip hop shows. That's what I was going to. But I was going home and I was listening to Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and stuff like that. And it wasn't until later I moved to New York in 2005 when I started really going to parties. But it was that sound from London that was coming over. It was Dub War, and it was Mala and Code 9 and Lofa and Scream, and those guys were coming over and playing right here for like $10 down the street. It was cool.
two of whom we're going to see tonight.
Yep, that's right.
So, well, you've brought a whole stack of vinyl in. It seems a shame not for you to illustrate some of your musical sort of palette.
Yeah.
And also, it's Thursday of the Academy. No, it's not. It's Friday. There you go. It's that point in the Academy where we're all sitting around and, we've all gone out every single night. So let's just listen to some good music, if that's all right with you lot.
Yeah.
Is that cool? That's what we're all here to do anyway, right? So, Drew's brought all these records in, some of which I can already see are definitely the kind that will wake you up. So,
we want to wake up now. Play a wake up record.
So what's this?
This is we're gonna play Nasty Habits, Doc Scott, old 31 records.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Let's see where we're gonna cue this guy from.
So just before you play this, I mean, maybe give us a bit of context to why you're playing this record, what it means to you, and when you heard it.
Sure. Well, when did this come out? This came out in 96?
No, a bit later, I think, like 98 or something.
98? Okay, wow. So, of course, I was not raving in a field listening to this when it came out. I was here listening to hip-hop and, I don't know, Bob Dylan or whatever I was listening to at the time. But I guess my context is just around 2004, 2005. My friend from England, who was a bit older, who had DJ'd for years, just was describing to me the euphoria he felt standing in a field listening to jungle and drum and bass, I guess, like in the middle of the night with the wind going through the trees and stuff. And it has a lot to do with the bass line in this track and the way it builds. But when I started hearing, I mean, first, I guess what came out of jungle, I sort of did it in reverse. Like I heard like Square Pusher Records, which is like sped up drum and bass and stuff, which is influenced from jungle records, but it's later. So like many sort of musical avenues I've discovered, I've sort of started current and gone backwards to find where things come from. And I think I've done that in my own productions as well, as I go back and I make some deep house now and things that have been around longer than more current flavors. But when I heard this, I think I felt the same euphoria he was describing. And it's an excitement I get from listening to a lot of electronic music that I didn't get from listening to rock or from hip-hop growing up. So it's always been this, like, was I sort of born in the wrong place? But, I mean, it's all good. I've gotten here somehow for some reason. But.
You can clap for Doc Scott. Wherever Scotty is, you can clap for Doc Scott.
It's funny watching you, like, eyes closed.
Sorry.
No, I think because that's it.
Flashback.
I mean, we have two different experiences with that record. I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. It's new to me, da-da-da. And
yeah.
It's like, I think you're, like, going back to that field.
The first time I ever heard that this is not my interview, it's yours. But the first time I ever heard that record, it got pulled up 12 times.
Yeah.
And the bass doesn't come in till about 4 minutes in. So that was about 40 minutes. But, yeah, what do you want to play next?
Yeah.
And why?
Then, okay.
This is like show and tell with Drew 40.
Yeah. Showing off my record collection. And then we're gonna go back a few more years to 95 or something. Dillinger, The Angels Fell. This came out of Metalheads. Yeah, so let's play some of that.
So that's Dillinger, The Angels Fall. Yeah, I mean, you have to clap that record, whether it's him or not. So obviously, I mean, it's my absolute pleasure to sit here, and all of ours as well, to listen to amazing records all day. But how do we relate some of these records back to you? And, what the feeling in these records, how has that affected your approach to producing music?
I mean, it has. I don't know if I've thought about how this has directed my approach, but I think the attitude, like, that goes along with this record, not only just the music, but like the label and the producer itself, like the whole package of this thing, mastered at the Exchange, like everything about this. There's even some other stuff written there. Feeds into my excitement of putting a record together. And then I think, and I've felt that excitement on smaller labels when I feel like it's a really hands-on approach, like releasing records on Swamp 81 with Lofa. I think.
Well, I mean, a lot of us, including Loafer, obviously a generation influenced by Metalheads, not only the label but the club and the whole movement. What was the equivalent for you? Was there a label and a movement and a nightclub that you sort of subscribed to and were really influenced by and went to in the States?
No, there absolutely was not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that change your sort of ability to kind of have access to the music and experience it in a nightclub?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard a lot of these records out in a club was me playing them in London in my sets, which was maybe a throwback for people that were there or playing it to young kids that had never heard it as well. I mean, that's the funny thing is that like the context outside of my bedroom there really isn't one. I think I just latched on to something years ago from like an Aphex Twin record and then just followed English labels, you know? I don't know.
And you were talking to me earlier about also being influenced by something that you call IDM, which is, you know, also interesting to me and maybe to people from outside the United States who don't really know what that term means.
Yeah, it's a dirty word, which I only use just because it's what I've heard and read so many times. It just in the same way.
What defines what is IDM?
Well, okay. Well, what it means is you want me to say it. You don't want to say it. No, it's a really weird term. It means intelligent dance music, which is just sort of degrading to every other type of dance music there is out there. And what I've found in my own production and talking to other artists, this is not my idea, but I find that getting a dance floor moving and dancing is really intelligent and hard to do in your own productions. So, you know,
what kind of artists or producers would fall under that sort of journalistic category?
Well, the ones that I brought in my collection, there's Aphex Twin and some Square Pusher and some old Luke Vibert stuff, and a lot of the old catalog on Planet Mu that I released on and stuff. Although they then adopted their own terms like drill and bass, and brain dance was Aphex Twin's thing with Reflex and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think when any artist feels like a journalist is putting them in a box, they're going to try and squeeze out of there naturally.
Yeah. And you're pretty candid in saying about how certain records have influenced specific songs of yours.
Yeah.
Like
Aftermath and Hardcourage.
Yeah. So maybe give us an example of that.
That's an old world record.
How you find the line between wearing your influence on your sleeve and also having something
on my left arm.
Yeah.
There's space there. Yeah, Aftermath. This is Warp's 6th single, 1990. Well, I don't know, WAP6. Maybe they had another cat number as well. I'm playing the influence first, then my record.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that.
So this is a sort of direct influence on your latest, one of your latest tunes.
Yeah, this one came out a year ago, maybe. Hardcourage, let's see. Which is the same name as my album, yet the track's not on there. I don't know, you figure it out. I don't know how that happened. That's the most bass I ever put in a record, by far, definitely.
So I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously we've been lucky enough this week to hear from some amazing legends, Giorgio Moroder and Van Dyke Parks and people who have an incredible history in music. But as someone who's like an independent producer right now that a lot of people can actually relate to in the room, we've got a lot of people here who are making tracks, probably some are signed, probably some are looking to get signed. Can you eat from putting records out anymore?
Yeah.
Can you survive? I mean, obviously it's like a truism to say at the moment that the touring is where the money is what everyone says. But, some of the early 12 inches that you played, you could make money from putting those out. Is that still the case? Can you survive in New York from putting independent albums out?
Yeah, albums, yes. Singles, much harder. Albums, are more expensive and the return is a little bit greater. But, I think it ties back to the fact that I don't have a lot of experience going out and raving as a kid. So, and I have, come from a family that believe in a real 9-to-5 sort of structured job. So, and also what I said before about how if I'm not making music, I feel like I'm being really lazy. So I think I have this sort of drive in me just to keep making tunes and releasing records. I mean, okay, I'm answering like in 5 different ways at once. Touring can be a way to definitely make a living. I'm incredibly honored every time I get flown out to play anywhere or play, even if it's just down the street, if it's just for a pal and I'm playing for free, or if I'm playing at some festival in Europe somewhere and they're really taking care of me. There's all, that whole range. I'm incredibly honored, and that's not just a diplomatic answer. Like, I really do feel like, why me? Like, that's crazy that I get to go do that. But there's a lot of aspects of touring which I don't like. I don't like traveling that much. I hate airplanes. I'm a little bit afraid of flying. I don't like any of that. I'd prefer to be home, just in the studio. So I have this feeling like I need to make albums and release big records and stuff. So you need a lawyer, an accountant, and a good album deal. But yeah, it's totally possible.
Now, how'd you get the good album deal? How?
Releasing records and being my sort of my own manager and my own sort of like, just hustling in a way, somehow presenting myself as a marketable thing,
Well, I guess we were talking before about how, it's a privilege to be able to create, and what most of us are trying to do in our lives is, buy us the time to be able to create, so that you don't have to go and do the 9 to 5, so that you can actually focus on going into the studio. And you were saying to me that you've actually managed to do that, which is quite an achievement from music alone.
Yeah, I have. And my parents respect that, which is cool. But that's a relatively new thing. I was hitting the road a lot harder last year. Well, I don't know. When the album came out, I did a good 2.5 weeks of touring in Europe, and then 2.5 weeks of touring in the States. Like, there was a good 2 months or so, or just about where I wasn't home.
And do you play the game and all that nonsense, all that online business, like, profiles and all the rest of it? Because it seems that a lot of people think it's more important to have your sort of press campaign sorted out before you make a record. What's the process been for you? How important is that whole brave new world of, self-promotion online? What would be your do's and don'ts for someone that's just about to kind of put their first artist statement out there?
Yeah, I would tell you this. If a label suggests, or even if you're part of the conversation of how much money is put towards an album campaign or a record campaign, I would be wary of large expenditures, which then go into your account, which you have to sort of recoup. It's not like owing the label money, but it does sort of go against you, and then you have to sell enough records to sort of get out of that. Because I think, honestly, what's really sort of hyped and what sells a lot is a new thing, a new label with a Tumblr and a Twitter, and some sort of hype, and maybe like some big DJ dropped a new tune in a rinse set or something like that, and there's like a YouTube rip that gets a couple thousand plays. Like, I don't know what's really more important than that, as far as getting the word out there. And a lot of the magazines are no longer magazines that do press; they're sort of just webzines or whatever, websites. We're all sort of adapting, So the fact that I could get an album deal did sort of blow my mind, but. Also publishing, you get a song in a video game or in a commercial or something like that.
And how early should you sign your publishing?
Wait, or talk to people that have already signed it and see what they think about it. I was thrown...
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. The third option. Take the third option, whatever it is. Talk to some friends and see what they've done, or some people and see what they've done. I'm glad I didn't sign the first option, and the second option that I did sign was great, and that expired, and my third option's even better. I don't know, but it's not what it used to be. I have a friend whose publishing deal in like '98 bought him a house in London.
Yeah, different times.
That's a different time. Yeah, that's buku bucks right there.
So do you have a studio at home, or do you have a studio in New York that you go and work out of? Talk to us on a technical level for a minute.
Yeah, for sure. I have always had my studio in my apartment, and I am 2 months away from having my studio not in my apartment, and it's kind of freaking me out because I'm used to just waking up and being right there. But the idea is that I'll be even more productive and actually like eat breakfast and get out of the house. But I have always had a very sort of in-the-box setup, which is an old obsolete version of Reason, version 3.0. It's from like 2003 or something like that, or maybe 2002. And I and I've never wanted to even try updating it because I've just gotten so used to how it works. I think I'm afraid of any sort of change with that. Yeah, I mean, actually, it's no longer in my bedroom. There's a separate room in my apartment. I have a true 1-bedroom in New York, which has a second room. So maybe it's a 2-bedroom. I don't know.
So you're never going to update Reason?
I don't know. I mean, yeah. So it's funny because they asked me to give a talk once on version 6, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Because I'm like, yeah, why not? He's a nice guy. And I installed it on a laptop the night before with a friend and had a crash course. And I showed up, and other than meeting my current girlfriend at that talk, it was a complete disaster. So it's pretty good when you look at it. But yeah, I had no idea what I was doing with it.
Talking of which, marrying personal life and work life, you've made no secret of the fact. In fact, it's kind of almost part of the press release that your latest album was sort of an overture to winning the affection of a woman.
Yeah, you've got the word muse written down and in square and like underlined and exclamation points. Everything else you can't even read.
Everyone needs a muse, quote, FaltyDL.
Yeah, I did say that on the radio, didn't I? Did. Yeah, I did. She liked that, so don't worry.
Hell of a drug.
Yeah. I mean, I can't honestly but it's funny though. I think like the job of a muse is to probably show you the whole range of emotions, right? But I can only create when I'm actually in a good mood. Even if I'm making sort of dark music, it's only because I'm happy. So if there's a situation going on where I'm not completely on the level, then I can't even make a tune. But maybe that's all part of the process, the creative process, I guess.
So it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I got an album done. So that was good. And I got 2 more to do, so we'll do it.
Well, maybe you should play For Karma.
For Karma, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
And then we'll go to questions right after.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you about your label. I forgot to talk to you about the next stage. I was going to ask you about the future, but you've just started a record label, right?
Yeah, I did. Blueberry Records. It's official. I have barcodes and everything. And stickers. I made merch before I released a record.
And are you doing that all off your own back, or have you got help?
No, all on my own. I'm looking at some different P&D deals with different distributors and stuff, and a lot of them want you to sort of go in at least half on the first release, which shouldn't be too bad if you're pressing up like 500 records or something.
And seeing as you're the artist and you can view it from the artist side of the fence, what's the first thing you're going to make sure you do? Pay
my artists. Is that right? Is that the right answer?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what are the things as an artist, apart from obviously receiving the money that you're owed, what things make a good label for you to work with?
Well, I think what I'm really excited about, so I've found 2 artists of music I really want to release, and one of them I want to release everything he sends me. And he's like this young, just super excited guy, and I have this excitement when I hear his music that I would like to have every time I'm about to release a record, And so if I still have this label in 10 years, hopefully I still have that excitement. I don't know what I will have been through in the next 10 years, but and what I really want to do is I want whoever the artist is I'm releasing to have just a real say in all of the creative sort of aspects of it, the artwork and the presentation. And this artist also happens to be a sculpture MFA student. I think he might have graduated already. And if he wants to build a crazy website and some sculptures, let's do it. You know what I mean? Just do something interesting that I think if I can really trust the artist, they have why really get in the way and tell them how I think we should present something? I think if this is a truly talented person, they should really get it out there the way they want it to be seen, And that's me obviously speaking for my own shit from releasing records with other people telling me how to do it in certain ways and fighting to get it the way I want it,
And I mean, how important is the whole visual aesthetic part to music these days? Because I know you put a lot of effort into getting that art done for the gatefold.
Yeah.
do you have a vision for your label that goes beyond just the audio side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only that, but it's surrounding myself with some of my best friends who are artists who are going to be doing the work with me. My friend Tom, who's going to build the website. Yeah, he doesn't really know this yet, but Tom, you're going to build the website for me. And the artwork and everything. And it's a brand. So, I mean, we got to really think about what we're going to want to use for a while. Just like anything. Like, I think that's why I wanted this on, this like old 93 Ninja Tune 92 sleeve. It was just cool because they haven't used it in a long time. And I was like, I saw it on the wall and I was like, we use that? And they're like, yeah, sick. Let's do that. So anyways, I have a song that I'm going to release from this fella named Bird. Let's see. That's not it. That's Ed Bias. It's going to come out this year. I'm being realistic. There's like a patience in his production, which I just do not possess. And he's about 10 years younger than me.
From New York?
Boston, I think, or Denver. I never know. Because he's like from one and in school in the other. Or he's gone to school in both and from one.
And talking of New York, seeing as, obviously that's where we are on this year's Academy. As you're not a native New Yorker, but you live here right now. Mm-hmm. What's it like, musically speaking? Just on a music level, what's the scene saying at the moment for you? And what's it like living here in musical terms?
There's a lot of options these days. On a Friday, Saturday night, there's a few things going on. Definitely. There's what there is now. There's always been a few nights going on here and there. Like in very relevant nights, not just like, New York has a great house scene and great hip hop scene, like really current relevant nights and stuff. But now there's these nights that are also record labels and are also just have a larger sort of presence in pop culture in New York as well, or not pop culture, culture in New York. So they're stronger. And there's a lot more people going out to them. And I think it's pretty easy to start a night. There's like all these spaces out in Brooklyn where people will travel to go to. You can rent out. I just saw a 40,000 square foot warehouse the other day, which I want to throw a party in. And I'm just thinking how many security guards I'm going to need to rent for that. And how many police I'm going to have to pay off. Just kidding. Yeah, there's a lot going on. And there's like these young kids. I think when you were here last, we went to that Astronautico party, which is thrown by a bunch of kids that are, in their early 20s and stuff. And it's really exciting. I kind of feel, I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm older than a lot of the people at a lot of these parties I go to. But it's exciting to see that type of energy there. Because even when I was their age, I guess I didn't have that outlet. So it's pretty cool.
All right, let's open it out to questions. I don't know if anyone's got any questions from the floor. If not, we're just going to play more music really loud. It's all right, I'll give you another 30 seconds. 28, 25. Yeah, all right.
No
love, play some tunes.
Fine.
Are you sure? No questions, nothing?
Come on, guys.
Not even one. Participant crew. Yes, thank you. Sir in the back.
Hey, what's up? I watched that Real Scenes New York with you in, and I remember you also wrote on Twitter that they only used one of the lines you said. Do you want to expand more on like what you think about like living in New York and like, I don't know, what you said but they didn't use?
Yeah. The Real Scenes series is incredibly well produced, and they all sort of have this unifying dystopic sort of film over whatever city they're looking at. Which is great. It's interesting, but it's just, of course, it's only one sort of side. And also with a city like New York, you'd need to film for like 3 or 4 months to get enough interviews to really get an accurate portrayal of all the scenes that are going on. But I think I got caught saying something like I'm sort of sick of the it makes me disgusted, the gentrification in the area, which I'm obviously a part of, and all these things, But what I think I then felt like I needed to say, and what most people who know me would agree is that I just feel incredibly blessed to live in New York and to make a living off of making music. I mean, if I'm complaining, smack me. I don't know why I should be complaining about what it is, what it is I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple things going on. Maybe like the idea of being misquoted is kind of frustrating, but or taken out of context. But what are you gonna do?
You love New York, then?
I do, yeah, very much. I could see myself staying here for a long time, or moving to Barcelona. So one of the two.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Hi.
Hey.
I wanted to know if there was ever a point in your life that, where you felt like you had little or no personal life because of your work, and how you maintain balance. And then when you play a song later, I know you'll play another song before we go. Could you tell us like a really cool story about it?
Just a cool story about it?
Yeah, or choose a song that you know has a really interesting story, and then...
Of how antisocial I was when I made that record. Yeah, I mean, specifically when I first moved to New York, I had I had two cousins living here and a couple of friends, because it's not far from New Haven. You sort of either go to Boston or New York if you want to get out of New Haven. So I came here, and it's also at a time when I really wasn't partying, I wasn't drinking. I was like a very sort of straight edge, tattooed kind of fella. And I for the first like 2 year and a bit, I did not go out on Fridays or Saturday nights or any real nights. I mean, I'd go meet friends, but I was home at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, making music till 3 a.m. and then getting up and then working part-time at a school as a substitute teacher, and then in the afternoon taking classes at City College. So all of that left me very isolated. But I had the options. My phone would ring and I'd be like, hey, Drew, come out. There's this party. And I'd be like, nah, I'm cool. And I think partly it was because I wasn't partying, drinking and stuff. But like I just was so on to something. And I think early on I got like the heads up from Planet Mu to release some records. I was like, okay, this is what's more important than me making an album right now. Like I just was weighing it against going out and meeting people. And I was like, this is a lot safer and more fun. Stay home and make music. But yeah, I mean, I was just getting, I think, lack of, vitamin B and whatever it is you get from the sun after a while. I was very antisocial when I started making records, for sure. Oh, should I play a record and tell a cool story?
Mean Streets.
Yeah, why not? This is cool. This is number one.
What's the story about Mean Streets?
Yeah, I sent a bunch of tracks to Lofa through Dave Q, a mutual friend who's a longtime promoter and just all-around music lover here in New York. And he passed a bunch of tunes on to Lofa for me, and then I went and did a Rinse FM in like 2010.
Yeah.
I think with Lofa and a couple other people, and he was like, yeah, so in what way did you send me those tunes? Or something like that. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, like in what capacity did you send me those tunes? Not really elaborating. And I was like, do you want to release some of those tunes? And he's like, yeah. I was like, all right, let's do it. So I just, and I make new tunes all the time and send it to him, and he doesn't even check them. He just wants to release the ones I sent him in like 2009. So these are all old tunes. I'm going to play actually the first track off part 2, and there's a part 3 that'll come out hopefully this year. Say what?
Is this the sort of Tony Allen influence vibe?
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to a lot of fella records and Tony Allen records. Like I think I brought Black Voices in here somewhere. But yeah, and in fact, I think why a lot of these are limited and there's no digitals because there's some pretty silly sampling going on that I would not be able to pay for.
It's always a good test if you see the sound engineer behind the glass
like
having
that.
a little dance. That's always a good look.
He comes to
innit?
all my gigs.
Yeah.
Like everywhere.
Was that a good enough story for that tune? Yeah. Good.
Was that
I
a
think,
story?
Yeah. You had a story. I think we had one more question just here, right? Can we get a mic? Thanks.
Hey, you mentioned that you've been playing at parties in Europe and obviously in the US. Have you noticed any differences in the crowd or in the scenes that you've visited?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think every city is different. I would to say just Europe and America as being different. I mean, there's every different city I've been to, and every country is always sort of a different sort of scene. But what I find interesting is like whether like I'll show up to a gig in London in like the first few years of touring and play like a very London set. And then the promoter would be like, I thought you were going to sort of play more of your own stuff for like a New York set. And I was like, oh, yeah. So, and it's not because I was in London. It's just, I mean...
What's a London set?
I don't know. At the time, like a lot of things that were on the front page of Boomcat at the time. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Did I play this? No, probably not. But, I mean, like, I think... I mean, you can't just say like, yeah, the internet, it's amazing. Everything travels so quickly. I mean, that's kind of a cliche, but in the last year, more than any time in the last like 4 or 5 years, I think music is traveling so far, so fast that you can get away with playing anything, anywhere. And it sort of has an appropriate context. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think probably way too much about these types of things. And I have a hard time articulating them, but yeah. There's definitely a difference everywhere.
All right, cheers.
Any more questions? Go. Oh, yeah. We have one at the back and one over there.
Speaking as a record label person, I guess I kind of wondered about the whole idea of record labels having some push and pull with an artist to put a record out, and sometimes you feel like you're trying to make a better record, maybe, or a record that you have more envisioned, and sometimes the artist agrees, sometimes they don't, and you put out a record with an artist, and you're not going to have any input into what they're doing at all, and so I guess it was just kind of this is not really a question. It is a question, but I don't have a way to phrase it as a question. No. It's not a defense. It's like, I think we've existed as a record label for 20 years. First 10 years, we had a lot of influence in the way records came. Second 10 years, the record industry changed so much, there seemed to be no longer a need to do that. But I think sometimes that does make the records more something, maybe. I don't know, interesting, possibly. Maybe not, but... Yeah.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't really know unless you released both versions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, but there's definitely artists that need a little bit of quality control, and artists that you can just let them do their thing, and they really know what they're doing. You know, the tracks they want to release. I mean, it sounds like you know more about it than I do, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I've worked with artists who have started in their own record labels, and it's interesting to see that transition from being an artist who's putting out a record with you to them then being a record label, having other artists put out records with them.
Yeah. Well, if I get to put out a second record, then I did my first one right, I guess. We'll see.
Thanks. One last question over here, and then it's tea time.
Hey, thanks for being here. How much do you think about your perceived audience when you're making music? And do you think about it at all?
Define perceived audience.
Like, I feel like, well, I don't want to talk.
You have
the audience that you imagine that you have. I mean, you see your audience at your shows, but to a certain extent, as an artist, you can only kind of have this like vague idea of who they are and what they are, because you don't know every one of them.
I think about that during the compiling stage, but when I'm actually making a track, I'm really not thinking about anyone, including myself. I'm hopefully just on autopilot and just listening and just sort of creating. Sincerely, although I think fail. I think that's probably when I fail, is when I'm worried about how it's going to sound anywhere. I mean, I think about sound system culture, and I think about, is this going to sound good on a system in a club? And that's changed the way I mix my records down now. Yeah, I think the less I can think about anyone, the better the art is, in a way.
Great. Well, please, let's say thanks a lot, Drew.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
FaltyDL.